So Assassin's Creed has a huge universe at this point, one spanning millennia. With there being so many characters, it's only natural that not every character who necessarily deserves it is given time in the spotlight. With that said, Ubisoft haven't half made some odd creative decisions, but today I thought I'd go over 5 characters that I think could make for an interesting game. I've avoided talking about any characters that we've already seen that should get sequels, as that's a list worth a video of its own. I thought it'd be interesting to talk about some more overshadowed or underappreciated characters, and with that said, here's 5 characters I feel like could have made for an interesting Assassin's Creed game. Now, number 5 is Aya. I know for a lot of people Aya would be their first pick. The reason she's at the bottom of my list, and keep in mind I do still like this idea, is that I don't really like nor dislike Aya in Origins. I know that's down to Ubisoft being run by Redditors, but I know if we got the original vision of Aya's character and Darby stayed on, she would probably be one of the best characters in the series as opposed to one of the most important assassins who wasn't really anything, at least not anything beyond her role as a co-founder of the Hidden Ones, which I really think she should have been. But I think a game following Aya as she expanded the Hidden Ones into Ancient Rome would be great. Ancient Rome is such a great Assassin's Creed setting, and it'd be great seeing how the Brotherhood spread across the world as the Hidden Ones. We could delve deeper into Aya's character and how the loss of Hemu and the events that followed made her into sort of a mentor figure, and as much as I don't like the retcon around Cleopatra's death that exists solely to sell comics, I think it'd be really nice to see that in the game, to have some closure between Aya and Cleopatra, and see how Aya became smarter and wiser than the woman that she was in Origins. So, number 4 is Mario Auditore. By the time we meet Mario in AC2, he's a middle-aged man who's already fought most of his battles. And the life of Mario, from what we know, is fairly interesting, and I'd love a game that explored his younger years. The reason I'd say a Mario game as opposed to a Giovanni one is because much to Mario's disappointment, Giovanni pursued a career in banking. And while Giovanni was still an assassin, his life wasn't as action-packed as Mario's, at least as far as we can tell. The game could pick up with Mario at his birth, just like Ezio, but we'd see a mercenary try and assassinate him, because in lore, shortly after Mario's birth, someone was hired to try and kill him. The killer was mysteriously found dead, and it was never really figured out, which is kind of weird. As for Mario's life, there's a lot that could be done with that, like how he made Monteriggioni into this community, and fending off constant attacks. Also, how he found a Shroud of Aden under the villa and lost his eye during that same attack, being one of the defining moments of his life. The 2 potential issues with a Mario game are, one, it's going to be set in Italy, like in AC2. I suppose it would just be Tuscany, and that could be much more, fleshed out. And the other is Mario isn't, super stealthy or agile like you'd want from playing as an assassin. And that's the main issue, really, that we know even by the time he dies, he's still a headstrong fighter who prefers a direct approach. That's something that I'd have to translate into gameplay, but there's definitely a lot of potential there. Like, the way that I see some of these, if they were made into games, are like anthologies. Like, before Unity, there was that leaked image of the Animus interface before you went into the Jacques de Molay mission, and we all thought like we could play all of those, or the legacy missions rumored for Origins. It would be sort of like those, and I do like that idea. Have it be in like an anthology game with just a bunch of side characters' stories. I know it'd never happen, but with the gameplay of Mario not exactly facilitating an entire AC game, that's how it would ideally be done. So number 3 is Mary Reid from Black Flag. To this day, I'm still kind of annoyed we got Freedom Cry, a kind of pointless expansion following Adewale, who, as a protagonist, is just a little stiff, and not the adventures of Mary Reid and Anne Bonny. And considering the final sequences of the game are kind of rushed, and by extension Mary's story that'd be great, but I'd love that full game as well. Obviously there's years of her life that take place during the same time frame as Black Flag, but she spends so much time, like months, whole sequences at a time, away from Edward working for the assassins. And of course, Mary was an assassin before Black Flag even begins. For how long, we don't know, but Mary's a fair bit older than Edward, so you can have a game set with her before Black Flag even starts. Have her meeting Atabai and learning of the assassin's values, because by the time we meet her as James Kidd, she's fairly put together and patient, which probably wasn't always the case. There's so little on record about Mary Reid, and I just think there's a lot of potential there. So number 2 is Kulan Gal, and if I had to pick one assassin, or proto-assassin as a current AC lore from the Sanctuary to see a game about, it'd be Kulan Gal. Firstly, Kulan Gal was an assassin from Mongolia, and after Golden Age Holland, Mongolia is probably the setting that I want most. Whenever I think of a Mongolian AC, I always visualise the combat. Popular weapons at the times were things like maces and scimitars, which I do associate with AC combat, and the Mongolians also used a lot of really interesting battle tactics like taking hostages and a lot of psychological warfare type of stuff that I feel could welcome stealth. Obviously, this is about the character more so than the setting, but I think the Mongolian Empire would be such an interesting enemy were the Templars pulling the strings, and they easily could be. The reason Kulan Gal is so well known is for helping Altair and Darim assassinate Genghis Khan, who was at the time using the Sword of Eden. And that's not the main reason I'd want to see this, you know, to see that comic play out, but it would be cool. We don't know much outside of that comic about Kulan Gal besides his proficiency with a bow and his actual legacy as an assassin, but I love the setting so much, and I think Kulan Gal would be a great vessel to explore that, with the game of course expanding on his character. So the assassin I think deserves a game most was kind of obvious, to be fair, and that's Xiao Jun. I know about Chronicles, but did you play that? Really? If you did, I'm really sorry, and if not, good. There's been this recent revival in a hype for a Shao Jun game that Ubisoft will never give us, and that's brilliant because she really is the biggest missed opportunity in the AC series. Have I just set up a future video that I've already made? I think I have. Shao Jun would be great. For one, it would have meant a game in China, and I'd really like for an East Asian setting, but also, it's Xiao Jun, a trainee of Ezio. I think Xiao Jun would be pretty cool as a protagonist because she'd keep the games connected. Altair and Ezio are heavily connected despite living centuries apart. Connor, not so much, but he's obviously related to Edward and Haytham, and then after that the series just sort of stops with that. Like, there's no connection between Arno and the Fries or them to Bayek, but if you went with Xiao Jun, you could have a story that would connect to Ezio's, and hers would connect to the Chinese Brotherhood, which would surely connect to the next protagonist, and I like that there's only so many degrees of separation between the protagonists. It makes it really feel like a living universe where the assassins are actually one connected order. It makes each game feel far more intentional if you're playing as a character for a reason, rather than them just being around at the time. There's pretty much endless possibilities with Xiao Jun, and that's why I think she's such a wasted opportunity, because you have a setup that was heavily present during Ezio's last days, and then she's pretty much an open book from there. We know she made the rope dart, and we know a little about what she did after by nature of Chronicles China and that comic coming up, but I think there's so much more that can be done with her rather than just using it as a recognisable face in side games and transmedia. Anyway, that's my list of 5 characters I think would be interesting to see expanded upon in their own games. I'm sure you guys would have different lists, so if you do, maybe leave those in the comments. Anyway, if you enjoyed, maybe leave a like, and if you didn't, maybe let me know why. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all in the next Assassin's Creed video.